Hey, it's Kirsten Klug, and we're with the Innovative Leaders Summit. And quite a few years ago, I was involved in a really cool program. I highly recommend it with the National Speakers Association, and it's called Speakers Academy. And you learn how to be a speaker and how you can use being a speaker to grow your business. And I got the neat privilege to meet Lois Creamer, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what she does. And it's just such a neat concept, right? Because there's all different ways we can grow our business. We can make phone calls, we can build our email list, we can get on stage, we can do it all together. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Sure. Happy to be here with you today,
Oh,
Kirsten.
thank you.
I run a company called Book More Business. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've got a very niche business.
Okay.
I say if you look up niche in the dictionary, you're going to see my face. But I work with speakers who want to book more business, make more money, and fully monetize their intellectual property.
Wonderful.
There are all kinds of models for speaking businesses, but this is what I've been doing. I used to speak to some corporate sales teams. I have a corporate sales and marketing background, but now all of my speaking is exclusively to professional speakers in this country, Canada, the UK, India, Africa, all around the world now. And I consult with professional speakers only. And so that's basically what I do, very niche.
Okay. And are the professional speakers, are they known on the stage before they come to you, or are they like growing to that point?
Well, I have both. I have worked with people, anyone from people who are jump starting a speaking business, who have certain expertise, in depth of expertise in a specific area, as well as people who are, quite frankly, multimillionaires in the business. Jack Canfield of Chicken Soup Claim is one of my clients.
Wonderful.
And he had already written Chicken Soup and had been speaking for 25 years before we worked together. So it's almost at every level. I would say that I work possibly a little bit more with more experienced speakers, but I also love working with people who want to jumpstart a speaking practice.
Okay, wonderful. And so what is the most important thing when someone either wants to jumpstart or take their business to the next level? What is something like, speakers are innovative. You're thinking on your feet, and you're changing and you're adjusting to whatever your client's needs are, right? But you still have your core. You have your core and your specific message. So what is something that you help those speakers do and stay innovative?
Well, I don't write speeches, and I don't tell people what to speak about. They have to come to me with a great speech.
Okay.
And the first place you start really is with a great speech. And I'm not the one who does that. But if you don't have a great speech, you're never going to be able to leverage relationships into a speaking practice. Once you have a great speech, your job then is to get some experience doing it on the platform. And I think there are a number of ways you can do that. I think one great way, and one that's often overlooked, I think, Kirsten, is Toastmasters. Toastmasters, I call the off-Broadway of speaking. I have many clients who are very active in Toastmasters. In fact, one of my best friends in the speaking business lives in St. Louis, where I am. She's been speaking for 30 years. Wow. And she still goes to Toastmasters. And the reason she goes there is to practice new material, to get well-considered feedback from people. And it's a great place to get some presentation skills that you don't have to pay big money for. You can pay a lot of money to some people who do this for a living, or you can start at Toastmasters. And then for people who may have a speech but need to get out, get some experience, I say you need to speak for testimonials. Testimonials I call the economic capital of your speaking practice, that kind of says that, hey, I've done this before, and here are some people who can attest to it.
Right.
I suggest that you get out in your local community, and people always come up to me, Kirsten, and they say, well, look, I want to speak. What should I do? And I say, it's very easy. Speak everywhere and anywhere you can.
Okay.
One of my tips for this is to buy, like you're in Portland, every Friday, the Portland Business Journal is published. Every major city has one.
Right.
And each Friday in the Portland Business Journal, a couple of pages in typically is what they call the calendar of events. And it lists every organization that is meeting just in the next week.
Okay.
And typically they will put in their promo there on the calendar whether they're having a speaker or not. And if you see they are, you should call them. Okay. Now, not for the speech that's coming up the next week, but just say, you know, I have a program that I think would be well received by your people, depending upon who the group is.
Right.
And I would love an opportunity to present in front of your group. And typically they'll give you 20 to 30 minutes max.
Okay.
But it's a great way to get practice and ask them if you like what I do. I'd love your feedback and a testimonial saying you think I did a good job.
Okay.
And this is kind of the way you build your reputation. I mean, when I started years ago, this is exactly what I did. I spoke everywhere in St. Louis I could. I got a testimonial from anybody I could. And the interesting thing is that people who are reading those testimonials that I put up on my website back then assumed I was being paid for each one of those, whether I was or not.
Right.
So I think that having a depth of expertise, a great speech, and get out there and get some experience doing it are the first few steps you need.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, wonderful. And when you talk about the business journal, I laugh too, because, you know, early in my business, I would grab the business journal every week and I would look up what businesses are doing really cool things right now.
Yes.
And then I would just get on the phone and call them.
You know, listen, I think that lots of times, I'm totally with you on this, because I think lots of times people, when they think of speaking or using speaking to grow a business or however they want to use it, think globally.
Right.
And there are always great opportunities, not always, typically, there are great opportunities. For example, you in Portland, there are lots of big companies that make Portland their home.
Yeah.
In St. Louis, there are lots of corporations that make St. Louis their home. And, you know, one of the things that I really cherish is being able to sleep in my own bed at night. I never got in this business to travel constantly, which is why I don't do sales presentations anymore. I just was traveling more than I want to.
Right.
But when you can get kind of national business, big business in your own hometown, or smaller business, who cares if they have your fee? If you have a fee-based speaking model, who cares? But I do think that people don't think enough about what is in my backyard, or if I go to my airport. If I lived in Portland and I go to the Portland airport, where can I fly direct within an hour?
Yeah.
That would be a good market. You know, I used to market to Chicago.
Right.
When I was doing corporate gigs, because I could get there in 35 minutes on a flight. And back then there were like a dozen flights a day.
Right.
So I created a competitive advantage for myself by saying, you know, my expenses would be very reasonable if you bring me in.
Right.
And I know I'm going to be getting there. I mean, worst case scenario, I'll get in my car, and Lord knows I did it in a winter storm, got in my car and drove.
You're tough. Yeah. And some people say that too, that, you know, you hear them where if you go over 200 miles to speak from where you are, you're going to get paid more. But I have to agree with you, is I've had some of my biggest clients right here in my back door. And I have worked with people on the East Coast. I have worked with people in Alaska. And you know what I mean? They were great clients too, but it does require some travel, you know, and then of course there is speaking that you do want to travel. Why not go to Hawaii and speak or go to the Bahamas and speak, or a cruise or whatever, you know? So, you know, what are some of
there are lots of options. I totally agree with you. Totally.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, you know, some people have talked about speakers being innovative is to partner with others. What is your opinion on that? Like Jack Canfield is one of those who partners with quite a few other people. So,
well, you know, I think that it only makes sense to partner with people who are not necessarily your competition.
Okay.
For example, in speaking, I belonged to a mastermind group for
Uh-huh.
years. I'm not in the same one now, but for years. And we all spoke on in different areas, like therapeutic humor,
Uh-huh.
time management,
Okay.
adult ed, and then me on sales.
Okay.
And we did a lead share.
Uh-huh.
Because now not every one of my clients wanted a program on therapeutic humor or adult education,
Right.
but lots of them did. And I could
Right.
offer my fellow masterminders a
Okay.
lead, and they offered me several. Things like this
Uh-huh.
can work for you, can grow your database. But I think key is this.
Uh-huh.
You have to know, when I recommend somebody, I know them.
Right.
I don't take a recommendation lightly, because every time I recommend somebody, my reputation's on the line.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you really have to
Mhm.
know someone. Now, these women I knew very well. It was all women, just happened to be. I'm in one now that is not just women.
Mhm.
But I had seen them present.
Mhm.
I knew them, and I knew that they would hit a home run.
Right.
And so I think that that's key when whenever you want to join with somebody
Right.
to help grow your business, you have to make sure
Mhm.
that they're a good representative, not only of themselves, but of you.
Right. Absolutely. I've learned that the hard way. A couple years ago, I hired a good friend of mine to I wrote the music, and then she was producing it. She was singing it. And then I hired someone, I paid her, I hired someone to do the piano and produce it and all that stuff. And we got to the end. And I remember that my producer, who I'd worked with in the advertising and marketing world, kept saying to me, I don't know about your singer. She seems, like, I don't know, something about her. And I'm like, well, I've known her for a long time. It's a good friend of mine. Da, 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 da. We get to the end. She wouldn't sign the paper. She wanted all full custody of everything. She wanted the rights to everything.
Yeah.
We lost the whole deal, and I paid out quite a lot of money,
Yeah.
So it's like, and even though we had a contract signed in the beginning, you know what I mean? It's just that integrity. It's just that integrity.
Well, it's, and I think you might have somebody that you know really well, but if you haven't seen them doing what you want them to do, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And that's why I've always been very careful over the years about recommending speakers, because I know it's my reputation. Same thing. I just had a website created. I love the woman I hired to do my website in her company. And so I will scream it to the rooftops. I have friends in the business who also do the same thing. Unless I have seen others' websites and really love them, I'm not going to recommend them. I mean, I think you just have to be very careful.
You have to be. And I have I have so many people I've worked with, and like on this summit, like reaching out to you. I mean, I had said, next time I launch my business, I'm going to include you in it, because I just really appreciate and just have seen what you've done with so many people that I've known. And it's just wonderful. And I have a video and photographer guy that I've worked with for many, many years. And, I've hired him for my clients. And as I'm launching my business here, he's like, oh yeah, let me come in for this. Let me come in for that. It's just,
that's great.
You know what I mean? And so there are some wonderful people out there that are just,
absolutely
just great. So you just have to.
One of the joys, I think, of being in business is being able to refer good people. Referring good people is a great reflection on us.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and you're helping another person with their business. What can be more fun than that?
Yeah.
I mean, I love to be able to do that.
Absolutely. And then it's like, when you do have something that doesn't go as well, like say that friend of mine that wanted the rights to everything and it was going to go big Disney in her mind or whatnot, you learn from it,
absolutely.
You learn so much from it. And I learned I have to be really upfront, even with friends, from the very beginning, and say, this is a business deal.
That's right. I think that sometimes, they always say don't loan money to family or friends. And I think that you don't want to loan your reputation to family and friends unless you're really sure. And, we've all learned a lot of business lessons the hard way.
Yeah.
And, but the the best thing about it is what you just said. Make it a learning experience, learn from it, so we don't make the same mistakes twice. You know, I never trust anybody who says, no, I've never made a mistake, I've never had a problem. You know, come on. We
Yeah.
all have.
Yeah. I
And
remember. Yeah, I was going to
we're
say, I
human.
remember. Yeah, sorry, I'm talking over you. Our internet's a little bit different. I was just going to say, I remember people would ask me that. Well, what do you do when you make a mistake? I'm like, well, we're human. And so we'll figure it out right there, and we'll figure out the best solution. I had one time where, this is a great story. A client of mine who was in the sewing industry had, back in the day of the Yellow Pages, had like lots of Yellow Page ads. Well, the Yellow Page company accidentally put their wrong phone number in there, and this person was getting all the phone calls. And so of course the owner, he calls me and he's like, Kirsten, what do I do? Because we were their marketing firm, ad agency. And I said, let's sit down, let's figure this out. You know, how about if we give something to that person that's getting all your phone calls? Is there like a percentage they could get off if they ever shop at your store? Could they give that, say, a percentage off to their friends so they can refer?
Make it a
turned
win-win.
out to be their best customer, and she was just like, you know, and then eventually they could change the phone number and it got fixed. But I mean, that was a whole year of getting a lot of phone calls for a very busy business and a best customer. So I always say, whenever there's a mistake, how can we turn it into something good?
Yeah, I think that's definitely how we learn.
Yeah.
And it's also how you don't let these things accumulate and bother you like crazy. You know, you just need to move on, especially those of us in a small business. I mean, we're all mere mortals, most of us. And we have to be able to be resilient.
Yeah.
If you're an entrepreneur and you're not resilient, you're not going to be an entrepreneur very long.
True. Very true. So I want to jump back in the speaking realm of things and marketing and getting business out there.
Yes.
So some people talk about speaking in organizations. So there's different ways: organizations, associations, right? Businesses.
Well, let me tell you, I define it a little differently than you do, Kirsten.
Okay.
Organizations is a term I like because I think it encompasses businesses, private businesses, nonprofits, and associations.
Okay.
And in speaking, I think the real money, if you will, which is why people come to me, is in business speaking, having a program that speaks to businesses. And you always have to ask yourself, if this is something that you're interested in doing, why would a business, think about IBM, okay? Right. Why would IBM take their employees out of all their little cubicles and desks and offices, put them in front of you for 60, 90 minutes, 2 hours?
Right.
Why would they do that? Plus pay you.
Right.
To deliver information. And businesses typically are looking for increased profits, increased productivity, increased performance, increased shareholder value. If you want to get down to the very basics, that's what they're interested in. Okay. So I always tell people that your program has to feed into those things, or businesses aren't going to think that they're worth it. And one of the things that has changed in our industry over the last many years, quite frankly, has been content. Businesses are hiring high content speakers. I say the difference between a public speaker and a professional speaker person is a public speaker is more like a lecturer or a teacher model. A professional speaker is someone who uses stories to make their points. Right. And those stories are what make your points more memorable to the attendee. Okay. And so your job is to be relevant to a company and speak to quite frankly, to their bottom line. Right. And they're looking for immediate differences. So for example, when I was doing sales, I always said, after this program, after my program,
Right.
Behaviors will be changed, and that they'll be doing this, and this
Right.
differently.
Right.
And that's what they want. People are looking for instant gratification now,
Immediate. Right. Right.
immediate change.
Mm-hmm.
And, even if you speak on something that takes, that is more process driven, that process is something that has to be applied, that can be applied immediately to be moving forward. I say we're kind of hired to move the old needle.
Yeah.
And unless you can do that, you're not going to get business bookings. And business is really where the money is.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. And then what is your thoughts about like this? I've seen a real value in having like Zoom workshops. So I've started these mastermind groups where I invite business owners in. I do a live workshop like this over 1 hour. I do like part of it is, educating, they're learning a new system. And then the second half of it, they're asking questions and applying them directly. And I've heard from people that they're able to go back to their business or whatever they're doing and they make immediate changes, immediate results.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
If you're getting paid for it.
Right.
Or if it's driving customers ultimately to do something where there's an exchange of money. I mean,
right.
Listen, I think that I am an advocate of people. I don't say speaking for free. I say waiving your fee.
Okay.
In consideration of other value, maybe like a video, an audio, some referrals, things like that.
Right.
But there has to be something in it. So, for example, I used to waive my fee when I did sales programs if business was in my target market, if the audience were people who make decisions on bringing someone in,
right?
If there was an option to be videotaped, if they were buying my books, if
right,
and paying expenses. Everybody always had to pay my expenses, but. So I think that you want value for value is the bottom line.
Yeah.
And lots of people might define that as paying a fee to be in your webinar, or this is a marketing opportunity for you to drive people into consulting or speaking or something else.
Right.
So, there are all kinds of models. And back in the day before I was involved in speaking, back like in the 80s, 70s and 80s, people made a living by going from speech to speech to speech.
Right.
And that really is no longer the case. Now, your challenge is to be able to take a speech, to be able to give a speech, and then repurpose that intellectual property into other vehicles that you can drive to the market. So, for example, I've written a couple of books. I'm doing an online course. I do audiobooks. I have products. I have digital downloads. I do consulting. I do speaking. There are a number of things that I do to drive income into my business. And one thing that we know is that people like to learn in different ways now. Because there are more options than we ever had before. And so I think your challenge, everyone's challenge in the speaking business is to create enough vehicles that they serve enough people to drive revenue, and where you aren't always on the road. Because, I think, for example, unfortunately, too late in my business, I should have started writing books immediately, and I didn't. And those books are a great revenue source for me, and I get royalty checks every month.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, why didn't I do this before? Well, I'm not kicking myself about it, but I'm going to write another book. And, these things and the courses that I'm creating are going to be where I don't have to get on a plane to make a buck, which is a big deal for me at this point in my business.
I always encourage my clients too, when I was working with clients. Now, of course, I'm launching myself, but the revenue streams, I call them revenue streams. If you have multiple revenue streams, if something kind of dries up, then you're not so worried about, am I going to sustain? And then the other element that I think is so important about having, and people will be learning this on the summit, is how to be able to communicate to all kinds of learners. And I think that's the beauty that I'm seeing with this technology that's coming out. Like, I'm visual, and I like to speak, and I like to use my hands, as you can tell. And I like the multisensory. So if I'm with someone, I'm going to be having them doing something while they're learning so they can take it. But this is the next closest, is having
Oh,
it, and they can see it and they can feel it. And then
I totally agree.
I have on this summit, I have people who are blind and people who have different learning differences, so we can see how they also learn. So that's my passion, is how do we learn? How do we remember? And
I think you're absolutely right. I enjoy being able to, now when I'm doing consulting, which is probably my biggest revenue stream, to be able to talk like you and I are right now. I mean, it used to be on the phone all the time. And now, if I'm giving you an idea, Kirsten, for your business, I couldn't see you wince at the thought of my idea.
I know.
When you were on the phone. But I can see your body language and how you're receiving what I have to say.
Yeah.
And so that adds, as you said, a whole different area. And so I really enjoy that. Plus, it gives you more opportunities. I'll tell you, I was approached at a National Speakers Association convention this last summer by Professional Speakers Association UK, United Kingdom. I have many friends over there, clients. And he said, we want you to come in and speak at our convention. And I said, I'd love to.
Cool.
But the only way I'll do it is virtually, because I just don't want to get on a plane for 8 hours. And he said, done.
Awesome.
Now, one of my big tips for business is this, and something that gets retweeted more than anything on my social media. Every time you ask for something, you risk a yes. Now, he could have said, no, everybody has to be in person now.
Right.
But if they wanted me, this is the way it had to be. Now, I'm doing a program for Professional Speakers Association India. Same thing. I don't want to fly to India.
Oh my gosh.
I'm doing it virtually at 5 a.m. in the morning. In just a few weeks, I'm doing the same thing for PSA Africa.
Oh my gosh.
And I've done it for Australia, Scotland, and Ireland.
Wow.
And it is a way to reach audiences, Kirsten, that I'm not going to, if I flew to India, that would take a week off my calendar. That's if I just flew in and came home. It would be a week off my calendar.
Yeah.
And that's can be a lot of money for people.
Right. Wow.
And so this is a way that I can be in front of people, and maybe they aren't going to consult with me, maybe they are, but they're at least led to take a look at my website, look at my books, see if one of them might be helpful. And it's a way that I can reach out to anybody in speaking. And I'm always looking to interest people in this business, because I think it's a great business. It's a very tough business.
Right.
But I think it's a great business, or I wouldn't be in it all these years.
Right. And I think too, like, the cool thing with how the speaking business is now versus the speaker that had to get in the car and go and speak and just do that. The cool thing now, I feel, is like we can offer our services in all different ways. So if someone has $27, they get your book and they can read it and they can apply it that way. If they have, you know what I mean? So there's all different levels. If they have more and they want to take their business further, they can work with you one-on-one. They can, you know what I mean? Or they can go to an association.
This is a great point you're making, because one of the things that I have been speaking to professional speakers about in the last 18 months is the last chapter in my book, Book More Business, Make Money Speaking. I call it Aftercare. And Aftercare was this, and I really kind of stumbled upon doing it. I'm embarrassed to say it wasn't genius. But when I was doing sales program, Kirsten, I always believe in, for every speaker, every client of mine, I say make a call to the person who hired you within 48 hours of getting off the platform speaking. And you thank them for the opportunity of bringing you in. You ask for their feedback. You ask for a testimonial, you ask for referrals. But here's what I started doing. I started saying, I loved coming in and doing the sales program. Your reps seemed to really eat it up. They were really happy. And then I would use one of my phrases that pays. I would say, listen, do you think it would make sense for me to work one-on-one or small group with your sales managers to implement the ideas, techniques, and tactics that I discussed on the platform?
Yeah.
Because if you do, we can do that. I don't need to fly back in.
Right.
What I started doing was I started doing Google Hangouts with the sales managers. We would tape them. Any of them who couldn't be at that meeting could watch it.
Right.
I would do one-on-one coaching with people who wanted it. I could do a webinar. I could do a Zoom meeting.
Right.
I could take them through exercises.
Right.
There are a number of ways. And what I found out, many times I made more on the back end than I ever did speaking on the platform.
Right.
Because suddenly I went from being a speaker to being a resource to that company.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Which is a whole different level.
Yeah.
And so I tell my clients now in the speaking industry, what can you do to help implement what you're talking about on the platform? You know, it adds an element of accountability,
right?
Which sometimes can be missing.
Right.
You give people great ideas, they leave, and you pray that they take advantage of them. This lets you know what really sticks.
Yeah. And I think that, you're pointing out a good thing. I went into all those schools and taught all these kids. I took my program into schools, and it was cool. I mean, kids were having a blast. They were learning so much. I was able to test out my material. I saw that it was awesome. I saw schools and organizations take the programs to a whole nother level. And in some places I was brought in multiple years after year after
Very
year.
Exciting. Yeah.
And I can see kids now 5 years later that still know who I am, but
I mean, that's great feedback for you. What that lets you know is this: they loved what I do. They want me to keep doing what I do. They'll refer me because they know that I'm good at what I do.
Yeah.
And the stickability quotient is there because I'm still recognized for what I did back then. I mean, all of this is feedback for a professional speaker. Right. All of it is feedback.
Right. Yeah. And I think my biggest thing was, like you said, I want to go back in now. I had to take a couple years off because of my injuries, but I want to go back in now and reconnect with those schools and then work with the teachers, so that they probably have already, I know they've already implemented some of it, but just that follow-up piece, that is such a beautiful piece. Because then it keeps rippling, right? Yeah. And there's new teachers that come into the school, and there's new principals. And so just continuing the program, or if it's a business, same thing,
It's the exact same thing in education market or in a more classical business situation. People come and go. And now more than ever, I mean, this is a place where people go from job to job to job instead of like when our parents were working and people stayed there for a gold watch. I mean, that just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
And that's really good for our business because it gives us a stream of people that need what we have.
We get really good at selling ourselves.
You better be, because you better be. One of the biggest things that I do for speakers is how do you monetize your intellectual property? How do you put it out in the market and make money with it?
That's what you got to do, right?
One of the remarks I get all the time, and I know we heard it when you were in my audience in Portland. I love what I do, but I just don't like talking about myself. And I always say, well, then you might want to get another line of work. Because if you don't talk about yourself,
who's going to?
Who is going to?
Yeah.
And no one can promote you like you can promote you. If you hear growling and dreaming in the background, this is Buddy the intern.
Oh, hi, Buddy. Oh, he's doing like my dog where he runs in his dream.
So I apologize for the little noise, but Buddy the intern is always with me.
Oh, good. And I had just a minute ago, I was laughing because my cat, she likes, when I get on these things, she likes to do funny things. Sometimes she'll even walk across or jump right in front of the screen and make her appearance. And then other times she'll wag her tail, and just then she was hitting something on my desk and it was going boing, 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 you know. So that's the funny part. And the live part that I love also about this is you can't predict some things. Maybe the leaf blower is blowing back there.
Well,
but when
yeah,
you're
you
on
just kind of
stage,
charge. You just keep
when you're on
charging.
stage, you have challenges too, right? Because like
Listen,
your audio can go out, the lights can go out. I remember one time there was a fire alarm that went off, you know, in the middle of my presentation. Well, that was something, you know. Now what do we do? Do we come back and finish, or do we just say, yeah, I ended up scheduling another day? So,
well, you know, I'll tell you, I have had this happen. I was in New York speaking to the National Speakers Association New York chapter, which is a very big
wow.
chapter in
Yeah.
NSA. And a couple minutes into my program, the audio went out. And so a friend of mine who happens to be in the chapter came up to help. And of course, you know, when you're speaking, you've got the microphone pack inside your pants and the back of it. So my friend was really getting very familiar with me. So I started singing Getting to Know You. And not that I'm a singer, Kirsten. But everybody got in. And I said, now just the boys, now just the girl. While she is back there working and they're making this work. And everybody was laughing. And now that's not the way I recommend you open a program, but it worked in New York for me.
Oh my gosh.
I never got invited to sing on Broadway though.
You didn't? Oh
no, totally shocked.
Oh man.
Oh well.
But next time, facilitator, this one, that one, this one. You can get the crowd going.
You have to be able to go with the flow. You know, stuff happens.
Yeah.
And I think that the best thing for being able to handle those kinds of things is experience and being comfortable yourself. And there are a friend of mine who speaks to meeting planners. She and I are writing a book right now. Talks about how speakers now must take responsibility for security. For example, if something untoward would happen, it's the speaker's responsibility to be calm and to know where people are supposed to leave, that kind of a thing. You know, these are things that people 20 years ago, 25 years ago, they didn't have to deal with this. Now, it's your responsibility to model being a leader in front of your audience. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That's really cool too. And I know even how much speakers do ahead of getting on stage, like making sure, you know, I was talking to Elisa Hayes, who's in a wheelchair, or Jake French, and they were talking about how they have to check to make sure they can actually get onto stage being in a wheelchair, but a lot of places don't have that access. And so then they have to consider, well, now what do I do? You know, so I mean, there's so many things ahead of getting on stage that as speakers you got to think about. It's the point you're making, it's our responsibility to know these things. Right. And I never went into a business, an association, corporation, private business, never went in without doing pre-program work. I had a pre-program questionnaire that I always handed out. I always had them fill out before I came in. For example, one of the questions on it is there been any big events lately in your industry or within your company? And the person who filled it out was the person who hired me. And he said, yes, 20% of our sales team was laid off 3 months ago. Now, if I did not know that, I could have gone on stage and gone, we love selling. Don't we love sales? And been a cheerleader. Right. But because I knew what was going on, it enabled me, after I was introduced, to come on and say, I know that there has never been a more challenging time to be employed by this company in this industry than it is right now. And you're being asked to do more with fewer resources and deliver more productivity. And this is incredibly hard. And I'm with you on this. Boom. Suddenly everybody was listening to me as someone who knew what the heck was going on within that organization, instead of somebody coming in with a canned program and they're just giving the program and weaving their stories and totally ignoring the elephant in the room. That is just saying
so much for how you are innovative and you are a leader in this industry, because you
You
are
have to
asking
do these
those
things.
questions that you have to ask. I just was reminded about, well, you've probably seen it, where you can go online and you can type in your headline, and there's a computer that will tell someone how good their headline is.
Yes.
And then I heard of some speakers that were trying it out on what they're going to start their and I'm like, what? And when I talk about, this is the AI stuff, right? There's computers that can't take over what
Absolutely
we
right.
do, what you
No,
do, what
I'll
good
tell you,
speakers do, what
you're
good
absolutely right.
communicators do. And there was someone, at first it makes me really sad and kind of mad, that you're just going to put on a headline and you're going to try a computer out.
Professionals aren't going to do that. I'll tell you my favorite example of using pre-program work. I did a program in Vegas for an association, and I knew that there would be about 300 people in the room. Because of my pre-program work, I knew that 299 of them would be men, 1 woman, and me.
Oh my goodness.
So I knew after I was introduced, when I walked out, there would be 299 men like this, with their arms crossed, thinking, but too polite, mercifully, to say, what does this chick have to tell me about selling? I knew this.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to decide, really, how am I going to approach this? And what I ultimately did was, I was introduced. I said, I'll be with you in just a minute. And I literally walked down the platform stairs into the audience. They were set up like classrooms. They had pitchers of water and glasses on the tables. And I took a napkin and I put it all the way in the water and I wrang it out. And I said, I'll be with you all in just a minute. I rang it out. I was smiling. I went up on the platform and I started dabbing my head and my neck with it. And I said, you'll have to excuse me. I am having hot flashes today. And I bet I have more estrogen coursing through my veins than you have testosterone. Looking at me right now with your arms crossed. And people, I said, I've got enough estrogen to counteract all of that testosterone. And suddenly arms went down, people started laughing, and people were with me.
Right.
But I think that those arms could have been crossed too long into my program if I hadn't done something to acknowledge what was, this was a male-dominated industry, obviously.
Right.
And so that's the way I counteracted it. And the meeting planner absolutely loved it.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I just have to say, I just have to honor you for doing that, because, oh my gosh, it's awesome. And that's, I think too, the professional speakers, if you've been in this business long enough, or a business owner, that you just figure it out. You probably did it on the fly. And you probably did it on the fly. And some of it, I know that I plan ahead. I plan ahead in my mind the night before, like send good energy to what I'm doing. I'm sure you do that as well, but you also have moments like that where you just do it on the fly and it works. Oh,
I think you have to look. I think that inevitably an expert, an industry expert, has to be able to acknowledge the environment that you're working in, apply your expertise really well in that environment, and be able to take on certain challenges in that environment without letting them see you sweat. And that's how this meeting planner it became one of my best clients, because this was an association. She managed several associations, and I got into a lot of her associations because she liked the way I did business. Now, that little shtick that I did, little did I know that it was going to create this years-long relationship with this meeting planner, because she thought it was great. Now, obviously, she liked my content, or I wouldn't have ever gotten another job with her.
Right.
But you have to be able to acknowledge what's going on, and that's why I think target marketing makes so much sense for speakers, because industries now want high content programs, and they want to know. They typically will pay a lot more for people who have a narrow bit of expertise applied within a specific industry.
Right.
That's where the sweet spot is. And the people
Okay.
who are making the most money speaking right now are
Okay.
people who do that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing all this wonderful information. I've had such a great conversation with you, and I bet the audience that are watching are having just as much fun as we are.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you want to add?
No, just feel free, if you're interested in this business, go to my website, bookmorebusiness.com.
Okay.
And I've got a couple books out on Amazon, Make Money Speaking and The Speaker Author, and invite you to pick those up if you're interested, and sign on to my blog, and you'll get some constant information on this industry.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you again, Lois, for being here with us, and it's been wonderful.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Uh-huh.